Create is by now a very well-known mod that brings a ton of great features to Minecraft. And even though it stands extremely well on its own, there's a whole bunch of add-on mods to the point where Create has become the core of a whole modded ecosystem. So today, we're going to have a look at 10 mods that let you enhance and customize your Create mod experience. The first and newest mod on the list is Destroy. Destroy brings realistic chemistry to Minecraft. Chemical compounds are not just made through simple recipes, and instead, you need to apply real-life concepts to combine and separate different molecules. You can build vats where you can control things like temperature, which, if increased, also cause an increase in pressure. Unless, of course, the gases are allowed to escape into the atmosphere through a vent. You can also do things like prospect for and extract crude oil, and even refine it by first heating it in a distillation column, and then capturing the resulting compounds at different levels. If multiple compounds are collected at the same level, then they have to be further separated out, for example, by using a centrifuge. The fun thing is that there's no set way to do things. The philosophy behind chemistry and Destroy is that there should be both more than one way to produce a molecule as well as multiple uses for it. So to separate some gases from each other, you might decide that it's best to cool them and then pipe away the liquids which result from condensation. Or you could separate them chemically by introducing something that reacts selectively with one molecule in the mixture. Destroy also adds a few new components that mesh well with Create's more mechanical theme, as well as some new explosives that each have some interesting properties. The mod also adds a ton more stuff, like pollution, a set of armor that's basically a hazmat suit, as well as some pharmaceutical compounds like aspirin and a few others. The next mod on our list adds some heavy machinery to Create in the form of diesel engines that can run on a variety of fuels, as well as some multi-block oil pumps. Create Diesel Generators adds 3 types of diesel engines, each suited for different purposes. The basic engine is the simplest and most flexible option, while the modular engine might be a good choice if you need to string a few together. And finally, the huge engine is available for when you need a whole lot of power, but it takes up much more space and makes a lot of noise. There are also the silencer and turbocharger add-ons for the engines, though not all engines can be equipped with these. Like Destroy, Create Diesel Generators also adds oil pumps, though in this mod the pumps are larger and you can build them in any style you want. There's also a mechanic for refining oil into gasoline and diesel, though it's much simpler than what Destroy has to offer. And if you want your heavy machinery to be a little bit greener, you can run it on plant oil, ethanol, or biodiesel. Next, we have a fairly recent mod that adds some exciting new capabilities to contraptions and trains. Create Interactive adds the ability to assemble contraptions on existing contraptions. This allows for some more complex motion that was previously impossible to achieve. Rotation can even be transferred between contraptions thanks to the propagator bearing. So one single power source can power all the sub-contraptions as well. In addition, blocks can be added to both assemble contraptions and trains, so there's no longer a need to disassemble them if you want to make modifications. My favorite feature is that trains can now be used on moving contraptions, so things like functional turntables are now a possibility. Trains can also now collide with other trains and with stationary blocks, though you can use the train buffer stop to stop a train without derailing it. Derailed trains are also affected by physics, so now you can do fun things like drive your train off a cliff. And if you want to put your train back on its tracks, you can simply right-click it with your wrench, and then right-click on the portion of track that you want to put it on. This mod also requires Valkyrien Skies, so make sure that you have that installed as well. Next, we have Create Deco. When we think of Create, we often think of its technical aspects, but it's also a mod rich in decorative blocks. This next mod enhances that side of Create. Create Deco adds hundreds of new blocks that do a great job of enhancing the look of any factory. Included are 8 types of brick materials perfect for the structure of any industrial building. Each brick material has 6 variants, including cracked and mossy versions. These new brick types are available in block, slab, and stair versions. Factory interiors are also well served with a whole slew of new blocks such as windows, bars, fences, and of course the various catwalk blocks that I think add that special touch to any factory. There's also the train hull blocks that you can use to enhance your train builds. And there's also some new doors as well, including locked variants and trap doors. We also get some new lights with yellow, red, green, and blue variants. And of course, all the new blocks that you've just seen aren't just available in andesite, but also in brass, iron, copper, industrial iron, and zinc types as well. Also added by Create Deco are shipping containers available in a variety of colors, as well as some colorful decals and placards. Create Deco formerly also had some vertical slabs, but those have been removed due to the developers feeling that they had become redundant due to the existence of copycat blocks in other mods. Which brings us to our next mod. Create Copycats Plus adds 24 of these copycat blocks. Here we have the full block, and then the slab, which can also be placed vertically. Next is the beam, which sits centered on the block on which it's placed, and then there's the vertical step, which can sit on any corner. Then there's the half panel, which can be placed horizontally or vertically, just like its vanilla Create counterpart. And then we have some familiar blocks like the stairs, fence gate, and wall. The next copycat type is the board, and it has the useful feature of being able to exist in the same block space as other boards. Pre-assembled boards in the form of the box and catwalk variant are also included. The bite block might be the most interesting since it lets you make anything that you might normally make with full blocks, only in a much smaller scale. Next we have the layer blocks, which can be stacked just like snow and can be placed in both horizontal and vertical configurations. In a similar vein, we also have the half layers, the slice, and the vertical slice. Finally, we have the redstone copycats in the form of the wooden button, stone button, and each of the 4 types of pressure plate. Next, we have a very small mod. Create Goggles allows you to combine Create's goggles with each type of helmet so you can stay protected while getting all the benefits of your goggles. The crafting recipe is just the helmet and the goggles, and if you want to take apart your new helmet, simply throw it into some crushing wheels. In addition, Create Goggles also add some back tanks for each tier of armor, so you can power anything that requires compressed air while staying protected. And in case you were wondering, the gold helmet with goggles and the gold back tank does keep you safe from piglins, so it's a good choice if you want to go to the nether. If you've ever wanted to bring a spark of innovation to Create, this next mod might be what you're looking for. Create New Age brings us into the modern era with interesting ways of generating power, transmitting it, and converting it into rotation. Power is generated by rotating generator coils within a structure of magnetic blocks. There are different tiers of magnets, and each higher tier will increase the efficiency of your power generation. Carbon brushes are what allow you to gather electric power, and then that power can be transmitted by wires to electric motors or other components that require electricity. Create New Age also adds a few ways to generate rotation by using heat. One option is to gather it during the day from the sun by using solar plates and then feeding that heat into a Stirling engine. Another far more powerful but extremely dangerous option is to make a nuclear reactor. Be warned that the reactor will emit deadly radiation, and failure to cool it will result in a destructive meltdown. Up next is the mod of choice to enhance everything having to do with trains. Create Steam and Rails adds a whopping 40 new track types with wide, normal, and narrow variants, each with their own bogie type. On top of that, there's now a rail type for each type of wood, including those found in the nether. There's also the Blackstone and Endstone tracks, a set of tracks that's just the rails, and of course, the monorail. Oh, and there's also the Phantom track, which is invisible unless you're holding one in your hand, so you can make your train appear to be flying. There's also some decorative blocks in the form of smokestacks. And we also get some functional blocks, like this semaphore, which when used with a train signal gives visual information about if an intersection is occupied. The train coupler allows us to couple and uncouple trains when triggered with the redstone signal without having to disassemble them. And then we have the andesite and brass track switches, which are functionally identical and allow us to force a train to go down one of up to 3 different paths. The track switches can be controlled by right-clicking or by redstone signal. Finally, we have the train conductor, which is a useful helper. Not only can he drive trains, but if you look at him while wearing the same color cap, he'll toggle whatever redstone control is in front of him. And if we give him goggles and use a remote lens on him, we can see the world through his eyes and even control him. Next, we have Create Big Cannons, which adds a few ways to have some explosive fun. The mod adds a variety of big cannons which must be loaded with propellant and projectiles, as well as smaller auto cannons which are simpler to use but are less powerful. Each type of cannon can be used with a larger cannon mount or the smaller and more mobile cannon carriage, though the latter limits how large your cannon can be. There are different material types that you can make your big cannon out of, and each has its limit of powder that can be used. The more powder, the faster and further your projectile will go, but if you use too much powder, your cannon will explode and destroy everything around it. Powder can also be packed into cartridges for faster reloading, and one cartridge can be packed with as much powder as 4 powder charges. There are also 10 different projectile types for the big cannons, each with their own special properties. Some of the more popular projectiles are the explosive, armor piercing, and liquid shells. Some can also have fuses attached to them, like impact, timed, proximity, and delay fuse. Autocannons have their own rounds, and you have the flak, armor piercing, and machine gun rounds to choose from. There's also the tracer tip that can be added on top of those as well. And of course, you can automate these cannons to your heart's content, whether that's making a pair of linked autocannons or a remote controlled big cannon that reloads itself after firing. The last mod on today's list is the one that in my opinion opens Minecraft to the widest range of new possibilities. Clockwork, though often thought of as a vehicle mod, is really about adding realistic physics to the game. Here are some of the core components of Clockwork. These are the ones that bring the physics of motion into the game. First and foremost, we have the physics infuser, which imbues physics into the selected blocks. Next, we have the propeller and the flat bearing, which are the two fundamental components of airplanes. And now the component that I think brings the most life into the game is the physics bearing. Given rotation, it'll spin any blocks connected to it. Their weight will affect how the bearing will behave, and any attached blocks will interact with the rest of the world. If we don't power the bearing, the attached blocks will passively react to any external motion and weight distribution. Using these components, not only can we make vehicles like cars or airplanes, but also complex mechanisms like universal joints, differential gears, and almost anything else you can imagine.